and saw that connection. In fact, when I got elected to the State Assembly in 1994, there was actually a debate among Democrats. There were about this issue. There were some back then who were arguing that to be for the environment was anti-business. To be for the environment would hurt the economic health and vitality of the region and the state. And I can't tell you that I was a climate change expert back then, but those arguments didn't make a lot of sense. And so when I campaigned for the State Assembly, and then when I got elected to the State Assembly, I began to speak out about those jobs blackmail arguments that were made by some. At that time, they wanted to restrict the Air Quality Management District from imposing regulations that would protect the public health and improve the air. And as you could see, looking at me, and just as Martha mentioned, I've been around a bit. I'm 56 years old. I actually remember the days when you couldn't leave your classroom because of air quality, when you couldn't play in the playground, when we had smog alerts. And some of the folks who, a little closer to my age, who grew up here remember those days as well. Well, a lot has changed since then, in no small part because young people like you, because progressives came together and began to say, hold it. What do you mean that we shouldn't be struggling to protect the public health, improve the quality of our air? What do you mean that to do that will have an impact on jobs? In point of fact, as we clean up our air, as we develop those technologies, we can create the new technologies, the green jobs of the 21st century. Now, this was 1994, not 2004, and certainly not 2008 when President Obama began to campaign on that issue. And so when I come to you on this issue, I come to you having advocated for the nexus and the connection between the environment and social justice, environmental justice, for more than 15 years. Now, I don't have to tell you that coming back here to Occidental, many of you already know all of this. You've been studying these issues intuitively. Many of you were involved as young kids at your elementary school or your middle school. I remember my daughter when she came home with her Conserve a Cat campaign. And Conserve a Cat would put on her cat hat, and she would turn off the lights after I left the room, and she would tell me about recycling, and she would lecture me. Now, her dad was already in the legislature advocating all these things, but sometimes forgetting to turn off the light like we all do from time to time. In a generation that understood that this issue of the environment is so critical to the fate of the human race. You knew that. You've grown up with that. But many of the people in my generation, and there are a number of them around the room here or around the courtyard, didn't grow up with that. You grew up with a dialogue about climate change and green jobs and the green economy. That climate change is one of the most pressing issues before us. And so for you, this is secondhand, second nature. But whether we're talking about creating good green jobs, whether we're talking about the stimulus needed to pull us out of this economy, because now almost everybody acknowledges, by the way, that in point of fact, the jobs blackmail argument never really resonated, except among a few. The defenders of the status quo, the folks who didn't understand that climate change, that global warming, that the public health has to be part of the debate. So now, as we talk about building a more sustainable LA, climate change is at the center of that discussion. But of course, you know all of this. You attend one of the country's most civic-minded institutions of higher learning, You have environmentally conscious professors here who recognize this and are really beginning to inculcate in all of you the necessity to build sustainable societies. You've been consistently at the forefront of linking the environment to the economy. It seems like everywhere I turn, I see Occidental students engaged as organizers and researchers, working in our government, organizing some of the more dynamic and effective grassroots campaigns that we see in the city, campaigns which have brought us clean air at the ports, livable wages for city workers, and jobs for young people in the growing green economy. You created the Progressive LA Network, which helped organize and mobilize community, labor, environmental, and business leaders from across the city. You came up with an agenda that was about making our city work for everyone, regardless of whether you lived on the west side or the east side. You brought to life the Arroyo Fest, the urban bike and pedestrian event. You demonstrated to us that it's possible to create a bicycle and walking culture around the city. But of course, we had to close the 110 freeway to do it. I actually was part of that first event. I remember it was surreal. I mean, I've been driving since I was 16, so do the math. I'm 56, that's 40 years. I had a car when I bought a car when I turned 16, and I've been driving on the Pasadena freeway every one of those years. So to get out of the car and have that freeway closed down with everybody on bikes and walking, it was just a surreal moment. But I think an acknowledgement of what's possible when we dream, when we organize, when we come together. The Urban and Environmental Policy Institute has pushed forward a vision for what could be possible. The students here and the faculty from a variety of disciplines, whether it's economics or ecology, mathematics or history, theater to physics, have engaged in collaborative projects that bring Oxy into the community. I think there's no coincidence that our President of the United States of America, when he first decided to go to an institution of higher learning, decided to come here to Oxy, because this has always been a place of innovation, a place where young people come because they want to change the world, because they want to make a difference. And so, whether it's food access or affordable housing, public health, building democratic workplaces or organizations, planning better communities, it's because of the work that you do here that I've been able to tap the best and the brightest. And while Martha has said no to me some 10 times, thank God that Regina Freer has not. She sits on our city's planning commission, a real progressive voice on that commission, and someone who will not be intimidated, by the way, and that's a good thing. I appoint strong people to these commissions, and the perspective that she brings and that many of you have brought to your efforts is a perspective that we welcome in the City of Angels. Now, I'm sure you know that next week world leaders will be gathering in Copenhagen to discuss climate change and the steps needed to build upon the Kyoto standards. I'll be attending the UN conference on climate change to tell the world about the groundbreaking work that the city of Los Angeles is doing to combat climate change. I want you to think for a moment, and many of you, 22 max, maybe 23, most of you averaging 19, 20, it looks just from looking around the crowd. And so 2005 was 4 years ago, you'd have been 14 or 15. And so most of you didn't hear or pay much attention to my first inaugural speech. All of the professors here, I think, did. Many of you were there that day. And I talked about LA being the cleanest, greenest big city in America.